Trump did not make the sale in Detroit. Rochelle Riley. His church visit put a spotlight on pandering and how little tolerance there must be for it. Nobody was fooled. Everything happened as it was supposed to. Donald Trump showed up in Detroit and got what he came for. He sat in a black church service for the first time ever. He stood along with the mighty choir and did the white boy sway. He kissed a baby and held it up high, Lion King-like, toward a congregation and community that had gathered to hear what Trump would say to black people. Folks he'd been talking about but not talking to, for weeks. He allowed a black bishop to put an anointed prayer shawl around his shoulders. And then he left so former GOP hopeful Ben Carson could show him where he used to live. Yep, it was just as expected. Except this. Even though this was a perfect infomercial to show white voters that Donald Trump cares about black people, Trump wasn't wrong for coming. If he had ignored black voters, people would be setting their hair on fire, even though fewer than 1% of black voters are expected to support him. With Hillary Clinton getting hit by bad news regarding emails and investigations almost weekly, it would be folly to continue to pretend that Trump isn't actually running, no matter how offensive he is. And Bishop Wayne T. Jackson wasn't wrong for saying yes to Trump coming to Great Faith Ministries International and doing an interview on his Impact Network. It could be a ratings coup for the network, which he founded in 2010 and, he said, reaches viewers via Dish TV, DirecTV and Comcast regionally. And unlike critics, he doesn't believe his congregation is so easily swayed, even though he says he is still deciding for whom to vote. The Trump visit put a spotlight on a church that sits in what was once an abandoned shopper's world, looking on the inside like a well-appointed megachurch and on the outside like it is still abandoned. It put a spotlight on a pastor, a savvy operator who may never talk this much again to CNN, MSNBC and the New York Times. It put a spotlight on Detroit because Motown needs every spotlight it can get, even one whose glare is a reminder that someone who has never set foot in a black church could be inaugurated in January. But more important than all of that, it put a spotlight on pandering. How little tolerance there must be for it from now on, and how little respect we have for some black people that critics and politicians think they could be so easily swayed. I heard reality in the voice of the women having the loud phone conversation in the church bookstore. Yeah, girl. I saw him reading from that paper. I saw it in the looks that went around when Trump announced that most people don't know that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Black people know Mr. Trump because he freed the slaves, back when his party cared about people. And I felt it while talking with 30-year-old Kelly Donald, a pre-med student at the University of Michigan, who walked into Great Faith on Saturday morning with every intention of voting for Hillary Clinton, and left Saturday afternoon committed to voting for Clinton. Neither the congregation nor most of America will know what Trump said until Thursday, when the Impact Network airs and streams the interview, unless it is leaked. In the days leading up to the interview, speculation about it dominated television news. When the Trump campaign leaked a script it created for Trump from questions the bishop had submitted in advance, critics cried that the fix was in, that Trump was creating an infomercial and Jackson was a co-star. The campaign even said that Trump would have some editing control over what viewers would see. Jackson denied that, saying that Trump would see the final footage when America does. He also said he added questions to the chat that were not submitted in advance to ensure that Trump didn't have all the answers up front. I am not a journalist, but I did the best I could. The questions I posed were to get answers on behalf of the African American community if he was elected president, and he was very relaxed and not intimidated. Jackson said Trump did not have a script. It was a conversation. He wasn't reading from a paper. The only thing that surprised Jackson, he said, was that Trump said he cared about Detroit. He said he's not a politician. He's a businessman, and he wants to help Detroit, Jackson said. Detroiters may not want him, Mayor Mike Duggan spoke across the street from the church before the interview took place and said Trump is the most phony major party nominee that I've seen in my lifetime. After entering to trumpets blaring and greeting parishioners with hugs and kisses, after lifting babies heavenward and praising the singing, Trump quietly read scripted remarks that he said came from the heart. For centuries, the African American church has been the conscience of our country. So true. I love when he does that, as if hearing the words for the first time. The African American faith community has been one of God's greatest gifts to America and to its people. You do right every day by your community. Trump quoted scripture and talked of his pride in being the nominee of the party of Lincoln without mentioning that the GOP hasn't been a friend to Black America for decades. Jackson offered equal opportunity pandering, embracing him, calling on the congregation to welcome him, which they did enthusiastically, and draping him with a prayer shawl. Jackson said he was showing the candidate the same pastoral love he'd show anyone. I'm a pastor. I must show love. I show love to you. I show love to a murderer. All I'm trying to do is broker peace. I'm not asking Donald Trump to do anything for me. But the question is, should Black America be asking Trump for anything? Or should they be working like hell to make sure he's not elected? It's possible to hear from him and not be swayed. Kelly Donald said, "We should not think that because the circus came to town, she or anyone else bought a ticket,